Hello? Hello?
So this is the third movie I have reviewed from director Richard Mansfield, and they've all been quite similar, and looking at the rest of the films that he's made, it does appear that he tends to make more or less the same film or variations of in his kind of film catalogue. Effectively, he's a very low budget filmmaker, less than a kind of £1,000 per picture it would seem, all found footage using a lot of security footage that he's clearly got access to. So what is the story of this one? Well, it focuses on two people. We have some type of investigator. He appears to be an insurance investigator, although it's not entirely clear. And we have this guy in this house that he is surveilling. And whilst this investigator is surveilling the house, he starts to notice things moving on their own, stuff like that, and inevitably it gets his kind of curiosity going, and it soon finds out that this house may well be haunted. So this movie, The Investigation, The Haunting of Sherwood, effectively is a guy effectively spying on another guy for the whole movie, noticing some weird stuff, and then ultimately kind of getting embroiled in it himself. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's discuss. Now, we have to bear in mind the budget. This is a micro-budget movie, so we have to have expectations in place. So I had reviewed a couple, as I've mentioned. There was one called Demonic Doll, which I think used its budget to probably better effect. And the other one I reviewed, The Mansfield Haunting, maybe less so. How does this one fare? Well, what works in this movie's favour? I think it has an interesting setup, although it is flawed. I will come on to maybe a better way that they could have approached this in the negative section, but it's an interesting idea here where effectively you have a guy who is spying on another guy through his electrical equipment and then noticing paranormal stuff happening. So that I kind of found an interesting setup, but flawed, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Clearly, because this is such a low budget movie, you're not going to see anything on screen, but it does occasionally have a little bit of a kind of a spooky vibe, you know, doors opening on their own, things like that. Again, it's all just like fish wire being pulled off screen, nothing particularly kind of, you know, fantastic that you're going to see on screen. And obviously, because of the very low budget this movie, this is probably just friends and family members of Mansfield here, because obviously it's such a low budget movie, I can't foresee that this is actually, you know, trained actors that are being paid for this. But that being said, I didn't think the acting was terrible considering that. So that's what I've got to say that maybe works in this movie's favour. But what doesn't work? Now let me tell you, I think this setup is flawed. The idea is interesting, having this effectively a hacker going into someone's computer and security system to watch. But this guy is like an insurance investigator, so he is bound by the law to you know, adhere to certain things. And obviously he is hacking into someone's personal computer and security system, which would be illegal. And therefore it makes whatever job he is trying to do moot, because it would not be admissible. So I think that they should have thought another way around this. He should either have been like a scammer or something, like some type of guy who is scamming people and hacking into their system, or maybe they could have done he's like from an intelligence background, like a kind of like an MI5 type, because it's a British film where he's kind of has the kind of the legal authority to do that. He's got a court order or what have you, and he's hacking into like a suspected terrorist. An insurance investigator is flawed because it doesn't make sense. Legally this wouldn't happen. And the way he kind of hacks it, he just gets in range of the Wi-Fi and is magically able to kind of get in there, but he can't hack his phone. So there's a real flaw in the logic here about the whole setup, which obviously, being a found footage movie, you know, it's kind of, the idea being it's meant to be kind of realistic. And then we have this guy literally, I don't know what he's actually looking for. It doesn't really give you any idea about what this person is actually looking for in the other one. He's just like watching this guy go to bed and do like just like boring household chores. And yes, this guy may be a weirdo. He's a single man living on his own with cats, always suspicious. But other than that, this guy is a very mundane kind of life, it would seem. So what is this guy looking for? It doesn't really ever make it clear. And he spends so long, like, just watching this guy, like, all day when he's sleeping and everything. What would you be possibly looking for when the guy's asleep? It doesn't make any sense. And, like, for example, we have a few other bits as well. Like, you'll see, and it's meant to be, like, live. So you'll see one scene where our guy who's getting spied on is asleep in bed, lights are off, so it's obviously at night. But then we have, like, the guy watching him in like a little mini screen, and you can see there's natural sunlight coming through the window, so it's obviously that's in the day and the other bit's in the night. You know, there's real just sort of like silly things. So I think the whole setup here is flawed. I think it could have been done in a way that I think it maybe would have made it more plausible, because it doesn't make sense as is. And I think the whole conceit with found footage is it has to be believable. You can get away with low budget and kind of maybe people not being the best actors because they're, you know, it's going to be less over dramatic, so to speak. But the other side of the coin is it kind of has to be somewhat more realistic, and this one fails right off the get-go with its whole idea. The movie is extraordinarily slow. It being such a low budget, there's really nothing on screen. The best you're going to get here is opening doors, strange sounds, rumblings around, the light moving. You get a little bit of kind of like your more typical found footage and, like, you know, guys' eyes reflecting and the kind of like night vision and things like that. It's nothing. You'll get nothing really kind of note on screen here. You'll get a bit of kind of like strange voice. It sounds like a heavy smoker on a phone call. There's just not much here in regards to sort of story and narrative flow. I mean, it's not a long movie. It's relatively short. It's about 70 minutes. So it doesn't outstay its welcome necessarily, but what we do have is a muddled setup and a very kind of mundane story with little to nothing happening for the most part on screen. So I think it's just ill-conceived, and Mansfield just is a little bit doing the same thing over and over again with these kind of movies. I think The Demonic Doll had a little bit more going on it, but they just seem to be the same film more or less, kind of just repeated over and over, verbatim. So I don't really think this is a particularly interesting found footage movie. It's, I think maybe the reason why some people are put off by the found footage genre is because we kind of get these kind of movies sort of churned out. Like I've said, I understand this is a micro budget movie, and I think it could have been an interesting idea here with this guy hacking in, but he needed to have a reason why he was doing it, and it couldn't possibly be anything that was legal, or if it was legal, it would have had to have got like special orders from like the government or something and have this guy be a suspected terrorist or something, but we don't get any of that. So it's a bit of a miss, this one. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. It's probably not worth recommending, I would suggest. Have you seen it? What do you think of it? Please do leave me a comment and I'll look forward to you next time. Bye for now.